In today's video, it's going to be an interesting one because I'm going to break down exactly the major difference, as I see here in the title, between an ecom brand that scales to $3,000 to $10,000 a day compared to brands that scale to $100,000 days, both in saturated markets. So we're talking about the same exact products, right? Same exact vertical and market. The only difference is their revenue. One does 100K a day and one does $3, 4, 5, $10,000 a day. I'm going to talk about the major differences. In case you are a new viewer, my name is Brando. I work with 7 and 8 figure brands. Just like this brand that you're seeing on the screen. Just in one single day, they did $88,000 in sales. This is not a case study or anything. It's just for me to show you the type of caliber of clients that we're typically used to working with. Great, now that we got the proof out of the way, let's get right into the video. I'm going to be doing one simple thing in the introductory part of this video. I'm going to talk about what 7-figure brands do to enter competitive markets compared to what 8-figure brands do and why they actually get to 8 figures in the first place. So let me just compare this first brand. The first thing that they do in most cases is that they just copy angles directly from competitors. So there's no level of innovation with the angles and marketing angles that they approach. So what happens is that whenever they go into a new market, the angles are already saturated. So there's nothing new about them, and so their costs are high, okay, in a saturated market. When I say market, I also mean like vertical, like skincare in the US, for example, extremely saturated and very competitive, right? Another thing that they do typically is that they target a broad avatar customer. So they just target like anybody who has skincare issues, or anybody, I don't know, the 40-year-old Sally that has back pain, right? As much as this is a unique kind of persona, it's still extremely broad if we compare it to how many personas there are there. So once again, same thing as the angle. If the persona is very broad and not specific, most likely all of those people are being marketed to, and so your CPMs get high. Let's talk about the next thing. Their sales process is only product centered. So they focus on the product so much without actually listening to what the market wants. And once again, this is the best way to get high costs. And so typically these types of companies don't spend a lot of time doing research. Okay, and then last but not least, just to end the circle here, their ad costs are on the higher end, which is exactly stopping them from scaling. So their CPMs are high. Why are their CPMs high? Because of these three things on the top. Okay, I'm going to be dissecting exactly what happens with brands that do $130,000 a day, right, or $88,000 a day. There's one major difference, and by the way, all of these verticals, I can't even explain before I get deeper into the rabbit hole here. I've worked with over 100 brands, so I've been able to see 7-figure, 8-figure, in some cases even 9-figure brands selling extremely similar products, but they just approach it in a different way. So I'm going to be talking about this. Before we get into that, you need to know two foundational things. Number one, or I should say, there's two like steps and ways to get to 8 figures or more. Number one is that you either have a super revolutionary product or something unique to the market where nobody has ever seen it. One other thing could be like an existing product to the market, but it has like 3, 4, 5 extremely valuable, unique features that really differentiates it and makes it pretty much a new product. The other thing that you can do is that you don't have a revolutionary product, but your marketing is very smart. And I'll explain what I mean by that. And in the case that you have both, you're smart with marketing and you have a revolutionary product, in most cases these brands scale to like multiple 8, most likely multiple 9 and 10 figures, okay? We're talking about billion-dollar companies. Now, how can we be smart with marketing? This is what I've seen work the best based on my experience. Once again, everything that I say in this channel is just based on me documenting what I've seen so far. So let me read what I say over here. Why most brands fail to scale is because their avatar customer they're targeting is too broad. I'll explain what I mean by that. Now you might be thinking, if it's broad, then I can target more people, right? And scale further. It's not exactly how it works, and let me explain further. So this is what it looks like when you're going after a broad market in a saturated market with a broad avatar customer. All of these things combined. As an example, you're targeting the 4-year-old Sally who has back pain with the example, to keep the same example that I spoke about before. This is what it looks like. You're in a red ocean. Everybody's trying to compete, and this is you, this little gray dot, hopeless, hoping something that actually works and sticks. So this is the worst strategy that you can use. I don't think it makes sense. If it works for you, you're extremely lucky. Maybe the way that you're, honestly, in most cases it doesn't work. I've never seen a brand have it work. Maybe they're breaking even and that's a win for them, but I'm talking about scaling to like $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 a month in spend profitably, right? Not just like break even, I'm talking about profit, right? And so typically what happens in this scenario is that high CPMs, hard to scale, high CAC. I already went through this. Now, this is how 8-figure brands approach it within a saturated market and a competitive marketplace. They have a crystal clear idea, as I just say over here, of the avatar customer they are targeting. It's not broad, it's the opposite. Let me show you what I mean by this. An example of an avatar customer is a 40-year-old Sally who is a nurse and works 12-hour shifts and has chronic back pain, right? She needs a solution right now to show up in front of her eyes to work so that she can actually show up in her healthcare journey, right? Which is a nurse. And most likely people that are nurses really care about these things, because then if they have back pain, they can't help their patients, right? So it's a double pain point. And then they also want to show up for their kids back home because they're probably like 5, 10, whatever, and they want to play with their mom and they want to be actively doing stuff with their mom. And so this is a perfect example of what a clear avatar customer is. And so instead of going after a trillion-dollar market, a multi-billion-dollar market, you can still go after a smaller segment of the market, right? Which basically looks like this. And you are able to enter the market. You see how this little dot is nothing compared to how big the market is, and how this dot is a significant portion of how this smaller market is. So this is like, this probably should be blue, because there's a concept that says red ocean, blue ocean. We always want to go after blue ocean opportunities where there isn't too much competition, the CPMs aren't too high. Same thing, I actually heard this from Alex Becker, the founder of Hyros. He was talking about how Klaviyo went into a very competitive market, email marketing, and they were able to absolutely kill it from the get-go because they were targeting a specific segment within email marketing, which then also grew rapidly. So it wasn't, it became from this to essentially like a mega, ultra big, Ecom is like probably now like if you launch an email marketing tool to Klaviyo, it's gonna be seen as a red ocean market, right? But before, the Ecom space itself was considered a blue ocean. That is a perfect example of like a SaaS company that implemented the same exact strategy that I'm talking about in this video. So now what if we want to scale further and target more avatars and scale further, the brand? In that case, you do the same exact thing. So you have funnels dedicated to each avatar customer, the 40-year-old Sally, the 50-year-old husband waiting home or whatever that has back pain, or the retired runner that is now 52 years old and now has chronic back pain or foot pain, whatever the case may be. We can create personalized funnels and marketing messages that resonate with these avatars. Let's see. Now let's get into the sales process, because it's all nice and sexy when we talk about it, theoretical things, but let me actually bring you through a real life example of why this would work and compare it to maybe a standard funnel. So let's talk about the avatar that is 40-year-old Sally, nurse, has kids, and due to her back pain, she can't show up 100% at her work and be with her kids when she comes back home. So triple pain essentially, right? And so the triple pain, why? Because back pain, you can't do anything with the kids and you can't show up to work at 100%, right? And so this is an ideal sales process. You go from an ad, maybe an ad, and this is theoretical, this is just one of the many things that you can test, right? The ad could be the ad is about how nurses are going crazy about these back strips, about back pain, right, that are finally curing chronic back pain and is helping nurses show up to work at 100%. And then maybe the sales process continues to an advertorial, or it's a storytelling advertorial of how this nurse explains to other nurses through the advertorial of how she went from a 9 out of 10 to a 3 out of 10 back pain. And she basically goes through her own story and organically presents the solution. And then it goes to a sales page, and the sales page is specific to nurses, so all the features, the benefits, the specifications of the product are congruent and contextualized to the nurse who is 40, right? So in many cases, even with ads, I see a mistake where even if you have a specific avatar customer, you basically just call them out at the beginning of the video, and then the rest of the video, which is like after 10 seconds, is just randomly shouting out features and benefits, right? Without actually contextualizing with the persona, which is the nurse. So we don't want to do the same mistake with the advertorial or the sales page. And then the product, I say here, add the product naming convention and or claims that use nurse language, and that overall resonates deeply with the nurses. So this is a perfect example of how to structure a sales process that is congruent and relevant from A to Z. Now, honestly, do you believe the above sales process, as I see here, would work better or worse than this one over here? Avatar is 40-year-old woman dealing with back pain, The ad is just an ad about how this device or these back strips get rid of back pain, right? Which is what you guys are maybe mostly doing if you're stuck. And the sales page is about the features and benefits of the product and how it helps all people with back pain or whatever. And then there's nothing else here to add. And it's like, maybe this is an exaggeration, but there's that was my point, honestly, to like really exaggerate the concept here. So what happens here, plus or minus, if maybe your sales process is similar or somewhat similar to what I just explained, this is a general sales process with very low levels of resonation. And so this is the end result, right? So the broad avatar, high CPMs, low CTRs, low resonation, less relevancy, lower conversion rates because there's a lower level of resonation, and higher cost per acquisition, very hard to scale, right? And this is the hyper-specific avatar in a saturated market, like lower CPMs as it's less crowded. There's less people literally serving ads to that specific persona with this angle and with this product, right? Less saturated. Higher CTR because it's more relevant. If it's more relevant, people click more. Higher resonation as sales process is specific to the avatar, as I say here. Very high conversion rate, lower cost per acquisition, stronger business economics, scalable, right? You get the point. It actually makes a lot of sense if you think about it this way, in my opinion. But let me actually go and bring you through. If you're wondering, how do I even start all this process? Because it seems like a lot of work. I need to build all of this, not even knowing if this avatar is working. So let me explain how we do it to save time and resources. Our approach is this. We start with number one priority, which is the avatar customer, right? So we want to do deep research. We use ChatGPT, TikTok, Amazon, Reddit. We use everything. We're using a lot of ChatGPT. That's why it's in green. Because with the O3 version, it's a very analytical and reason-based research, which looks at all sources, and it's basically a creative strategist on steroids that you can use personally. And so we do all the research to then come up with possible avatars that we can target. In this case, I just put 6, right? And then we try to understand everything about these avatar, how they think, how they speak, their situational context, their aspiration, who do they want to become, what do they say to themselves that they need compared to what that they want compared to what they need, their emotional motivations, all this. We basically know them like they're our brothers and our sisters. We know everything about them. What we do then is that we connect the angles, just like the angle with the nurse is the avatar, right? And the angle is basically leveraging that you want to be on top of your work and therefore your kids. That's the angle. The nurse that is 4-year-old that has back pain is the avatar, right? You get the point. And so we want to connect these. We come up with angles after we do the research. And then this is when we test, we start testing process ads. Sorry, we start testing the process only with ads. We don't want to do the entire funnel. We want to just test some avatars at the same time. How do we do it? We do it with advertising and just good ads. So in this example, there's 3 tests. We send them to like a good angle, right? And then we test the 3 avatars and we send them to all like the best landing page that we have the highest converting. In this case, we found, for example, that avatar 3 was the winner. So what is a winner, or what is something worth exploring? Something that is like either break even and has like very, very interesting metrics like hook rates or high CTR, lower CPMs, where you know that you just need to do a bit more digging to make it work, or something that is just profitable from the get-go and you see that it's outperforming anything else. These are the 2 things that I would look. Now, the next step is that you optimize the angles. So you find the avatar. Now you're able to explore more angles. Maybe it's the kids angle, or maybe it's the angle about showing up at work, or maybe it's just being super frustrated because they're a nurse and they want to show up and whatever. You get the point. You find the angle, and then eventually you get to a point where you have the avatar that is super specific to a specific angle, and you create a personalized sales process from ad to advertorial to landing page to offering. What I just showed you the example over here above, right? This example here is a perfect example of a final stage of how you should look like. And whenever you see brands that generate $100,000 a month, you'll notice that they essentially scale this process horizontally with like multiple different avatars, right? Or what they do is that they scale this with like ads. So whatever, this is all connected badly, but what I'm trying to show you is that there's also another way to do this where you just do like, you have different avatars. So all of these are like on the ads, avatar 1, avatar 2, avatar 3, and then they send them to like, instead of maybe a dedicated funnel, they send them to like a quiz funnel that looks something like this, right? Quiz funnel. And then based on the decisions where they send them, or what they click and select on the funnel, they send them on like different parts of the landing page, right? As an example. So like pain point 1 or pain point number 2, right? Or pain point number 3. And then depending on that, they send them to like a specific offer. So I build this in 20 seconds, but you get the point, right? This is also one way. The sales process overall, though, is extremely personalized. So that is it for this video. I hope this was valuable. I do have one freebie for you just before we end the video. This is the exact same sheet that we use to scale our clients to 8 figures. It's a documentation sheet. We always say build as if you were selling. And so if you want to sell the business, you definitely have to document everything. On another note, don't just do it for the selling, do it for your own sake of documenting and putting everything into an organized sheet where you can track things like a creative testing tracker. So we have like all of our tests are being tracked over here. You can get access to this sheet. It's free. There's a link down below. There's also other things like creative concepts, a daily report. You can leverage ad copies, visuals, UGC tracker, CRO tracker. There's a bunch of things. So take advantage of it. It's completely free. Do it for your own brand. Do it for your own sake. And on a second note, if you have a brand doing at least $100,000 a month and you want to explore the opportunity of growing and building a real 8-figure company with a partner just like us or similar, you can book in a call and we can audit your business and go through exploring the opportunity together to see if there's an actual real opportunity. If there isn't, we'll part ways, but at least there's an exploration call. That's all. I'll see you on the call and definitely see you in the next video. Bye.